A story of hidden desires, never told during slavery. The plantation was quiet beneath the weight of a summer afternoon. The air was thick with the scent of magnolia and sweat. In the distance, the rhythmic hum of work filled the fields, the sound of blades slicing cane, of men's low voices carried by the wind. From the veranda, Eleanor Whitmore, the mistress of the estate, watched the horizon with a gaze that lingered too long on one man. His name was Samuel. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and strong, his skin glistening under the sun like polished bronze. He moved with a grace that seemed out of place in a world that denied him humanity. Eleanor had noticed it long ago, though she told herself she hadn't. She was the wife of a respected planter, a woman of refinement, expected to embody virtue, silence, and control. But as the months passed, she found her eyes drawn to Samuel's calm strength, to the quiet dignity in his every motion. It began with a glance, one that lasted too long to be innocent. He had come to the main house to deliver a basket of vegetables from the garden. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed. For the briefest moment, she felt something she could not name: warmth, awareness, danger. She stepped back quickly, her face flushed, her breath caught. That night, she wrote in her diary, "It is sinful to feel as I did today. I must pray for my mind to be pure. The Lord tests us with temptation. Yet, I cannot forget his eyes, calm, sorrowful, and wise beyond all men I have known." Weeks turned into months. Her husband, Charles Whitmore, spent most days traveling between plantations. The loneliness of the house grew heavy. In that stillness, Eleanor began finding reasons to cross paths with Samuel, asking for small tasks, flowers for the table, help with lifting heavy trunks. He was respectful, always keeping his eyes lowered, speaking only when necessary. Yet between them hung a silence alive with meaning. She sensed that he knew, not what she felt, but that something unspoken had passed between them. Once, while trimming a rosebush in the garden, he pricked his finger on a thorn. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. Blood welled on his skin. She tore a piece of her linen handkerchief and wrapped it around his finger. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Then, suddenly aware of what she was doing, she stepped back, trembling. "Forgive me," she whispered. "There's nothing to forgive, ma'am," he said softly. That night, she could not sleep. Her heart was caught between longing and fear not only of scandal or punishment, but of herself. One evening, a storm broke over the plantation. Thunder rolled through the hills, and rain poured in torrents. The servants had long since retired to their quarters. Eleanor sat alone in the parlor, staring at the fire. When lightning struck a nearby oak, she startled, and the candlelight flickered out. Moments later, Samuel appeared in the doorway, soaked from the rain. "I came to see if you were safe, ma'am," he said. The wind howled outside. For a long moment, neither spoke. She looked at him, at the rain glistening on his skin, at the strength in his shoulders, at the gentleness in his eyes. Her breath caught again, but this time she did not look away. He hesitated, sensing the danger. "You should rest," he murmured. "Stay," she whispered before she could stop herself. The silence that followed was the most fragile kind, the kind that holds both temptation and ruin. He stepped back, shook his head slightly, and left without another word. She sat alone for hours, trembling, shamed, and yet unable to regret. In her diary, she wrote only, "He has more honor than I, may God forgive the heart he gave me." Rumors began to stir months later. One of the overseers, jealous of Samuel's favor in the household, whispered that the mistress showed him too much kindness. Her husband, furious, sent Samuel to work in the distant fields, far from the house. Eleanor said nothing. She dared not. When she passed him one last time on the path, he lifted his head slightly, not in defiance, but in quiet understanding. They exchanged no words, no farewell. The distance between them was more than social, it was the vast, unbridgeable space that slavery built between human hearts. That night, Eleanor burned her diary pages one by one. She watched the ink curl and turn to ash, the words that had carried her hidden desires vanishing into smoke. Years later, when the war ended and freedom came, the plantation was in ruins. Her husband had died in battle, and the fields lay empty. Among the freed people who passed through the town one spring, she saw him once more, older, leaner, but still with the same calm in his eyes. He did not approach her, and she did not speak. Yet in that single glance, she felt both grief and peace. History would never tell their story. There would be no record, no letter, no proof, only the faint echo of a desire that dared not exist, buried beneath the weight of a world built to forbid it. She never married again. But in her last journal, found after her death, there was a single surviving line. What was denied to the world was known in the heart, and perhaps that is enough. The fields were where Samuel learned silence. Words could betray a man, but silence could keep him alive. Yet even silence could not keep his thoughts from wandering to the house on the hill, to the woman who spoke softly and looked at him as if she saw something more than a servant. He had seen that look before, in other women of the master's family, a look mixed with curiosity and fear. But with Mrs. Whitmore, it was different. There was no cruelty in her eyes, no mockery. Only a quiet ache she tried to hide. He didn't know whether to pity her or protect himself from her gaze. When she bandaged his hand that day in the garden, the warmth of her fingers lingered long after she walked away. It frightened him. A man in his position could not afford to be noticed that way. To be the object of a white woman's affection, or even her rumor, was a danger sharper than any lash. He prayed every night that she would forget him. But he also knew he didn't want her to. The night he went to her during the storm, he knew what it might cost him. The overseer had gone home drunk, the sky was burning with lightning, and he'd seen the lamps in the big house go out. He told himself he went only to help, to see if she was safe, but when she turned toward him in the flicker of firelight, something passed between them that neither could name. Her voice trembled when she said, "Stay." He wanted to. God knows he wanted to. But he also saw the ruin waiting on the other side of that word. Her husband's wrath. The whip. The noose. The fire that could consume them both. So he stepped back, lowered his eyes, and left her sitting there in the dark. Outside, the rain hit his face like judgment, but inside him burned a quiet sorrow, the knowledge that even love, in his world, was a kind of trap. When the overseer's whispers reached the master, Samuel was sent to the far fields, the worst of them, where the soil was rocky and the sun merciless. It was punishment disguised as labor. The message was clear: he had been too close to the mistress. He worked without complaint. To show anger was to invite more pain. But in the silence of the fields, his mind replayed every glance, every word. He did not think of her as a white woman or a mistress. He thought of her as someone who saw him, truly saw him, if only for a moment. That, he realized, was both a blessing and a curse. One evening, he found a folded scrap of paper hidden under a basket near the well. The handwriting was hers. It said only, "I am sorry. I did not mean harm. I wish you peace." He burned the note before anyone could find it, but the ashes stayed with him, not in his hands, but in his heart. Years later, when Union soldiers came through and the chains finally broke, Samuel left the plantation and walked for days until he reached a town where no one knew his name. He worked as a carpenter, built homes for people who had never had walls of their own. Sometimes, when the air was still, he thought of the house on the hill and the woman who once looked at him like he was human. When he saw her again, by chance, years later, after the war, he was not the same man. She was standing outside a ruined church, thin, dressed in black. Their eyes met for only a moment. No words. no touch. Just a quiet recognition of what might have been. Then he turned and walked on. He did not look back. Long after she died, and long after his own hair had turned gray, Samuel still remembered her, not as a mistress, not as a forbidden dream, but as a sign that even in a world built on cruelty, the heart could still feel something pure. He never told anyone her name. When his grandchildren asked why he never married, he only said, "There are some stories too heavy for words." And when he died, a small scrap of linen was found folded inside his Bible, old, torn, and yellowed with time. No one knew where it came from, but it was said to be the corner of a handkerchief, once used to stop a drop of blood. More than a century had passed. The plantation was long gone, reclaimed by vines, storms, and time. Only the old Whitmore house remained, half collapsed, its bricks swallowed by moss. In 2021, Amara Whitmore, a graduate student in history, arrived from Boston to research her family's archives. Her grandmother had told her stories of the old estate but never spoke of what really happened there. Amara was descended from Charles and Eleanor Whitmore, though she felt little pride in the name. What drew her back was curiosity, the need to know the truth that history books never told. Inside the county records office, she found a box of brittle papers marked private, Whitmore family correspondence. Among receipts and letters was a thin, leather-bound diary. The ink was faded, the handwriting delicate. On the first page, in neat cursive, it read, "Eleanor Whitmore, 1859. Amara opened it carefully. Most pages were torn or burned, but a few remained intact. What she read left her trembling. "I must not think of him again. The Lord forgive me. I only meant kindness, yet my heart is guilty. His eyes follow me even when I pray." Another page. "Tonight the storm came. He came too. I told him to stay. He did not. I thank God for his strength, and curse my own weakness." Amara read the words again and again, her pulse quickening. Who was he? At the back of the diary, barely visible, was a smudge of writing, a name. She held the paper under the light and read it aloud. Samuel. That name echoed in the dusty silence. Amara searched local archives, slave records, and census lists. After days of digging, she found him, Samuel Carter, listed among the enslaved men on the Whitmore plantation in 1858, then later, as a freedman and carpenter in a nearby town after the war. He had signed one document himself, a marriage certificate for another couple. His handwriting was careful, almost graceful. Amara felt a strange pull, an invisible thread connecting her to that name. A week later, in a small local museum, she met Marcus Carter, a volunteer curator and amateur genealogist. He was tall, thoughtful, with deep brown skin and warm eyes. When she mentioned the name Samuel Carter, he smiled faintly. "That was my great-great-grandfather," he said. "He was a carpenter. Built half the old homes around here." Amara froze. "I think I found his name in my family's diary." They began comparing records, names, dates, places. Piece by piece, the story unfolded. The Whitmore mistress and the enslaved carpenter. The diary and the burned pages. The handkerchief fragment preserved in Samuel's Bible. When Marcus showed her the small linen square kept in his family's box of heirlooms, Amara's hands shook. The initials IWhy were embroidered faintly in one corner. Their eyes met across the table, two descendants of people who were never allowed to speak their truth. That night, Amara sat under the stars outside the ruins of the Whitmore house. The air was still, the fields silent. She imagined Eleanor standing there long ago, watching the same horizon, longing for something the world forbade. She felt no shame, no judgment, only a deep, aching empathy. Their story wasn't one of romance in the simple sense, it was a story of two souls who saw each other's humanity in a world that denied it. When Marcus joined her, neither spoke for a while. Finally, he said quietly, "Maybe we were meant to find them, so they wouldn't be forgotten." Amara nodded. Maybe remembering them is the only justice they'll ever get. Before leaving, Amara donated the diary to the museum, along with scans of every page. Together, she and Marcus curated a small exhibition titled Hidden Desires, Voices Beneath the Plantation. Visitors read Eleanor's words beside Samuel's name, the handkerchief displayed under soft light. People wept quietly as they read. Not because it was a love story, but because it was human. On the last day of the exhibition, Amara wrote one final note in the guest book. "They could not speak their truth, so we speak it for them. Love, when denied, still leaves its mark. Descendants of the silenced." As she closed the book, Marcus reached out and took her hand, not in possession, not in secrecy, but in understanding. And in that moment, the past, once buried under centuries of silence, finally breathed again.